The Egyptian interim government pulls Al Jazeera Mubasher off the air, vowing a tough stance on media. Does that signal a broader crackdown on freedom of expression? And is this a setback in post-revolution Egypt? You're watching Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Divya Gopalan. Security forces raided the offices of Al Jazeera Mubasher Misr channel in Egypt and detained some of its staff and confiscated equipment on Sunday. Egyptian authorities said they also shut down a company that provided facilities to the channel Al Jazeera Mubasher Egypt. Now, the closure comes as the Supreme Council of Armed Forces and the Cabinet decided to temporarily suspend granting new permits to satellite channels. They have also decided to prosecute the channels that are seen as threatening to the stability of the country. A decision Egyptian rights organizations say amounts to regression back to the oppressive policies of Mubarak's regime. While Osama Hakel, the newly appointed Minister of Information, reinforced claims that a suspension of the Al Jazeera Live channel had nothing to do with its content. He said, and I quote, "This channel has been working for months without permission, and their claim that they have applied for permission is not true. The proof is that we did not stop Al Jazeera Arabic and English from working." He went on to say there are about 200 foreign media offices in Cairo which have been abiding by the law. And if Mubasher Misr applied for a permit, then they would be able to work without any problems. Well, we have a panel of three from Cairo to discuss this further. Islam Lotfi, lawyer of Al Jazeera Mubasher Misr. Maged Reda Botros is a professor of political science at Helwan University in Cairo. And Hisham Kassem, publisher and human rights activist. Now, Mr. Kassem is also the former publisher of Al Mazri Al Yum, that's Egypt's first independent daily newspaper. Well, I want to start first with Mr. Islam Lotfi, who is a lawyer for Al Jazeera. And I want to ask you to respond to what Osama Hakel, the Minister of Information, said, saying that Al Jazeera did not have the proper licenses and permits to air, while Al Jazeera's counterparts, both the Arabic and English channels, have their paperwork and they're fine to go on air.
We shocked after we heard Mr. Osama Hakel, because all of us were believed that there's something changed in Egypt after the revolution. Actually, while I was listening to Mr. Hakel, I thought for a while I was listening to Safwat Sharif or Anas al-Fiqi, the two former information ministers. He used the same tricks, he used the same bad language while speaking about media, and he mentioned two foreign fundraising and hidden agendas and all this stuff. Actually, he used the same technique in Egypt during Mubarak regime. You ask for a permission, you seek a permission, you give them all the papers and documentation that needed to give you a permission or to be permitted to work, and then they come to the final stage and just said, okay, everything is okay, go ahead, start your work, and if there any something wrong, we'll tell you, and then give you the license, to keep a reason for stop you if you cross the red lines, with the government or with the states. This was during Mubarak, and nobody imagined that will be repeated after the revolution, but it happened.
Well, Mr. Hisham Kassem, you once published an independent newspaper. What do you make of these allegations that this channel doesn't have the right paperwork and licenses to be going on air? And how difficult is it to get this paperwork done?
Practically no channel in Egypt has the right paperwork, and it's a tactic that, again, like Mr. Lotfi just said, was used by the former Minister of Information, who is now being charged with murdering Egyptians. And whenever they want, they just pull the plug on the channel or the bureau by saying there's a certain paper missing. Jazeera applied for that paper, which they claim is missing, 4 months ago. In the meantime, 12 cabinet ministers have appeared on the channel. The members of the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces have regularly made interventions and been on the air and possibly been guests in that channel. It's been operating for 4 months. Again, the reasons given by Mr. Hakel were different. Once it was a complaint from the neighbors when the BBC offices are in the same building. Once it was this missing paper issue. He gave about 3-4 contradicting reasons in the same time, on the same day. So I can only see this as a sad crackdown, because I personally have appeared on television and commended SCAF for the amount of licenses that have taken place. But clearly they're beginning to get nervous about the whole matter. This is a knee-jerk reaction to the fact that Jazeera Mubasher Masr is the only news channel operating independently from the government in Egypt at present. And after it showed the attack on the Israeli embassy live on Friday and was practically the only channel, they decided to pull the plug and close down the operation. This is probably the worst development that has taken place since the revolt or uprising in January. And it's disturbing because Mr. Hakel today is going to be meeting with the heads of the other channels, and this is like a warning to them. So it's a very sad development for me.
Okay, Mr. Maged Reda Botros, what do you make of Mr. Qasim's statement saying that practically no channels have the right paperwork to be airing, and many channels are still on the air?
Well, let me first analyze the political situation and political scene in Egypt now. I have no say in the technicalities. The scene now, it's Egypt is a sovereign state. It has all the right to regulate the activities of foreign and national agencies, broadcasting, and like any other organization. They need to have a license or permit before they start operating. So the idea is that they crack down, but not on a specific channel. You have two other Jazeera broadcasting virtually the same content. But as I listened, like any other observer, political observer or analyst, we see and listen to the press releases and statements of the officials in the Supreme Military Council or the interim cabinet. They say that we have cracked down on things to stop this chaotic situation. This chaotic situation is not only in satellite channels, it's on every single aspect, because what Egypt has witnessed in the last week, it's either chaotic situation or regulating everything. Now we are resorting to the anti-terrorism laws known as emergency law. Part of it that's regulating all agencies broadcasting news. I heard that the government has a press release saying that several channels, apart from Al Jazeera Mubasher, have been cracked down on. So the idea, as I can see it, it's only regulating those channels that do not have a permit. I don't see it, or I don't interpret it in form of cracking down on Al Jazeera specifically. Otherwise, they could have shut down Al Jazeera International and Jazeera Arabic in one shot. But why Jazeera Mubasher?
That's right, but you do cite the fact that emergency law has come back into place, and that was the tactics used during Mubarak's regime. And the fact that these channels that once soon after the revolution, there was a plethora of channels that came out, a lot of them saying that they now have free speech. Isn't this a step backwards, wouldn't you say?
I wouldn't say this. As an impartial view. Now, we have a permit or a license pre to operations, not post to operations. I cannot, just as my colleague said, present papers and assume that it's approved. I have to get the license and permit to operate, not start operating, then wait for the permit. This, I've been working and living in 21 countries. I haven't heard of a sovereign state allowing any organization to begin as they submit the documents. You need the license, you need a permit to start your thing. Otherwise, if you operate illegally, now you are apt to be shut down like any other organization. So I believe the government is trying to regulate the political, economic, social environment, including the mass media. So, and the last, my colleagues were saying that they have permitted officials to go on Al Jazeera. Now, people might know whether they are on Mubasher or Arabic, Jazeera Arabic or Al Mubasher. I mean, I'm on Jazeera, I'm on screen, then I don't know really which one. Mm-hmm. I'm not defending the government, I'm stating a fact from the political point of view.
Now, I'd like to pick up on this point of regulation. Mr. Lotfi, as a lawyer, is this the way to regulate media? Basically, the government has said what this plethora of media has done and all the messages they're sending is that they are encouraging chaos and encouraging dissent. So is the answer to shut down stations that they believe does not have the correct paperwork?
Actually, this is the same argument that was used by Mubarak to scare the people and society and all the world, okay? Chaos and keep the social peace and all this stuff, you know, it's repeated and it's very old. And actually, I'm sorry to hear it again. We didn't made a revolution and pay this price from blood and, you know, pain and arrested people and, you know, people who was murdered, okay, to enjoy again with emergency law, okay? We didn't work for this. We work for a country, free country, has freedom of speech, has a political, good and strong political participation, and, you know, yani, a country we deserve to live on it. This is first. Second, I'm not saying people should work without a permit. Maybe on one stage I'll say this because there is a right to people to share information, but this is not the issue now. I'm saying we provide all documents. And we did all our best. And they said, okay, this is a paper, you are perfect, go ahead and work, and we will give you the final paper, the license, later. And this is not about Al Jazeera only. All channels the same. And all new channels feel the same. And some of the old channels in Egypt during Mubarak, the same. I'm saying this system made by Safwat el-Sharif, you know, and it's still working. And this is not proper. And by the way, we seek this permission about 4 months ago. And then we have another meeting with General Tariq Al-Mahdi, you know, the supervisor from, you know, he supervised the Egyptian television and radio union. And he promised that this will be solved. And this was in July. So we are not, you know, we are not working without a permission. We provide all papers, and the people, you know, who are responsible about this issue, they said, okay, like you are similar to the other channels, go and work. And I'm now saying this is not acceptable in Egypt after the revolution to have the same rules that were made by Mubarak regime, you know, to keep the people, you know, under siege, to tie their eyes. You know, we have something to change. Actually, we will sue. We will go to the court, to the state council, and to sue the ETUR, and to sue the investment department, because actually, this moment I don't know what is the exact law that I should follow. I have to take a permission from investment department. I have to take permission from the ETUR. I have to take permission from communication minister, you know, and I have to take permission from national security. Mm-hmm. You know, there is a mess of laws, and this mm-hmm. was made by the regime, Mubarak regime, to stop everything. Now, the world changed, Egypt change, nobody will accept this. We will keep struggling, and we will keep, doing all what we can do to keep this country free.
Now, I just want to remind our viewers what has happened since the ouster of Mubarak. There's been a growing worry in Egypt that the country is falling back into the oppressive policies of the former president. Now, on Saturday, the Supreme Council of Armed Forces reactivated a state of emergency after an attack on the Israeli embassy. Egypt was under emergency law for 30 years when Mubarak was in power. There's now growing dissatisfaction with the restriction of press freedom. On Wednesday, the government announces a temporary freeze on licenses for satellite channels. Egypt has no stable government in place, and protests continue in the run-up to the elections this year. Now, I want to bring Mr. Qassem back into the discussion, and we're talking about the fact that there is no stable government in place, and the temporary government is struggling to control and build a situation where elections can take place. Now, with so much dissent and still many protests, isn't it their responsibility to try and make an atmosphere, an environment where political parties can have a stance without being sidelined by television channels or by the media or by protesters whose emotions are raised by what's being broadcast, which is unchecked?
How can broadcast in any way affect the work of political parties? Political parties need media in order to get their message across for the voter to be informed. Without that, in a country like Egypt, where social media basically brought about an uprising or a revolution, and it's much stronger now than mainstream media, because mainstream media has been systematically destroyed under military rule for the past 60 years. If we continue with this destruction, we don't even need to continue with destruction, just not help mainstream media back in place. We leave the country victim to social media, which is very unreliable. This is a very dangerous and destabilizing situation when the main sources are really coming from blogs or social media without the professionalism and rules that guide the work of mainstream media in accuracy, in verifying information. We basically leave the country to hearsay. But again, Mr. Boutros earlier was saying that every sovereign country has the right to regulate media. To begin with, when I come here to defend Jazeera, I'm not defending Jazeera. I'm defending the right of Egyptian people to know. And when the executive have the right to regulate and to hold and allow media to operate, it's actually the perfect way to cover up for their mistakes. There's no such thing as applying and having to wait 4 months and then suddenly being closed and told, no, we're not giving you the permit, or you don't already have one. This is a violation of the country's sovereignty. Again, he says that Jazeera International and the Arabic Jazeera are operating freely in Egypt. Yes, they are, because how many minutes or hours do you give Egypt a day? But for them, the existence of the first news channel that is consistently and constantly broadcasting Egypt only became a threat. The argument that the cabinet ministers I referred to earlier go out there without knowing the differences between the different channels is an argument saying that they are blathering idiots. Because I'm here in Jazeera International, I sometimes go to Jazeera Mubasher Masr or the regular Jazeera, and it does not really take a high IQ to know where I am being filmed from. I'm not surprised. Last time I saw Mr. Boutros was exactly here in this station. He was defending the policies of the former Minister of Information, and I'm surprised. A whole uprising has taken place in the country against such policies, and the man is languishing in jail for corruption, and still he comes out to defend these policies again. Maybe he has a natural inclination to defend authoritarianism.
Mr. Boutros, I'm going to give you a chance to respond to these allegations made by Mr. Qassem. Firstly, talking about whether the reason the channel Al Jazeera Mubasher was targeted was because it was focused 24 hours on Egypt, and the rest of what Mr. Qassem has said.
Well, First, I'm not speaking on behalf of anybody. Second thing, I'm not speaking on behalf of the military council or the regime. I'm speaking on a purely political stand. The political stand now, we have contradicting issues now. Are they cracking down on the content or the illegal existence of a channel? Now, it's not the content simply because, as I stated earlier, the content is the same. Content, what's broadcasted in other Jazeera International and Jazeera Arabic is the same content, regardless of how many minutes
given to each topic, is what he's saying. Whereas in Al
no,
Jazeera
how
International,
many minutes? Now, what Jazeera Arabic, when there is a pending issue, they allocate excessive time to it. It's literally the viewer who wants to hear what. That's one thing. The other thing, I hear contradicting issues. One, they said, one of my colleagues said just now that the other practices before the revolution, they were using to present papers and wait for the license later on, and they start operating. They like this. And now they said it's not liberal. Now, are you criticizing the other regime for being oppressive and like this, the way they act? Now, you have to stick to one stand. Do you want the rule of law? Liberalism does not, or freedom of speech does not leave it without limitations, without regulation. Now, you want freedom of speech without regulations? Where would you find this? Anywhere. You have to regulate the activities regardless of the content. I would say, regardless of the period I have been talking about. I'm talking about, when I was saying freedom of speech, Jazeera was free to broadcast whatever they want, so as Jazeera International. But when it comes to the sovereign state, and I insist on that argument, that's like any other Jazeera branch worldwide, you have to get the permit. Why wouldn't you want to get the permit now under the allegations of freedom of speech and liberalism? Liberalism are there in United States, where you broadcast on daily basis from there. Do you have a permit or not? Would you allegate that you could start in United States without a permit because it's free there, freedom of speech, liberalism there? So I see a lot of contradictions. Now, as politically, when I speak about something, regardless of the regime, I'm a political analyst, regardless of, I'm not defending anybody, I'm just stating the political views.
Okay, Mr. Lotfi, very quickly, I'm going to give you the final word here. How important are regulations for speech, for communications in any country?
our colleague, he used his experience about 21 countries he visited. I don't know what country he lived or he visited, maybe Iran, Cambodia, but I know that we have Universal Declaration for Human Rights. You know, he speak about this. I know that we have the International Convention for Political and Civil Rights, and Egypt ratified this, and you know, based on the Egyptian constitution, all terms of this convention should be like the national laws, and if there any conflict between the national law and this convention, you know, this convention should be applied, not the national one, and this is based on the Egyptian constitution, 1971. And I wanted to say something. We have a letter, you know, from the ETUR, the Egyptian Television Union, saying go ahead, because we are gonna there is a process to change the rules and the regulation, and once we finish the regulation, we will send you the final license.
I'm afraid we're running out of time and we'll have to leave it there. I'd like to thank all of my guests. They are all in Cairo: Islam Lotfi, Maged Reda Botros, and Hisham Kasim. And thank you so much, our viewers, for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. We, of course, welcome your comments and suggestions. You can email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Goodbye for now.